Rumelt. Quite an interesting book. We started yesterday to review this book, and we already covered quite a good number of chapters. Yesterday, we were able to review chapter 1, 2, and 3. We had three speakers in the house, 10 minutes round, and 10 minutes for questioning. Sorry about that. I have my phone on. Yesterday, we looked at good strategy is unexpected. We looked at which is chapter 1, and chapter 2 was discovering power. Chapter 3 was bad strategy, taken by our very own boardroom advisor and administrator, Sauluatoyi Ayedu, and followed by Engineer Kenneth and also myself, who took on chapter 3, which is bad strategy. Today, we are also going to have three presenters on the roll. I can see that we have Lady Ovosa, who is going to be taking us on chapter 4. Ma, you're welcome.
Chapter 5, and that's what I prepared
Oh,
for. Yeah,
chapter
David.
5. So David Ipese is going to be taking us on chapter 4. And chapter 4 is why so much bad strategy. Thank you for that correction, Lady Evosa. I can imagine unnerving you at such last minute when you are so very well prepared to undo chapter 5, which is the kernel of good strategy. And our Lady Ramatu, who is not yet in the house, is supposed to be following after Lady Evosa to take chapter 6, which is using leverage. On that note, I'd like to welcome everyone to the boardroom and also our online YouTube um, guests to the boardroom. We would immediately start by welcoming David Ipese, who is also acting as our support for tonight, the consummate student and avid reader of the boardroom, and also our social media administrator. David, you're welcome. Over
All
to you.
right. Thank you very much for having me. Today makes the second day for this reading, and I'll be taking the chapter 4 of this chapter, which says, Why So Much Bad Strategy? And I love the opening of this book, even though it's a very technical book, as we all agree. It says that, bad strategy flourishes just because it floats above analysis, it floats above logic, choice, held and held aloft by hope, by odd hope that one can avoid dealing with these tricky fundamentals and difficulties. So, I mean, when I first read the first two paragraphs, I mean, what I could get there was that there's just so much bad strategy because people are just being
David,
lazy. Can you hear
David,
me?
we cannot see you. Can you sit up a little? We're not
Okay.
seeing you on the frame. Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So, I mean, what I could deduce from the first two paragraphs of the book was that people are just being lazy to, do the right work and do the main work. I mean, that is what end up giving a lot of people bad strategy, right? People don't want to do the main work. So bad strategy is the active avoidance of the hard work of crafting a good strategy, right? It is not enough to write your goals down. It is not enough to, have aspirations, right? But having a good strategy is now saying, okay, these are the steps I need to take. These are the steps we need to take. I need to take us 2 months, 3 months to achieve this certain goal, right? It is a process that creates a path for everyone. So strategy is not something that you just learn to the solution at the end of the day. It's a process kind of thing. And it says that when leaders are unwilling to leaders are unwilling or unable to make choices among competing values and parties, bad strategy is the consequence. And then gave like 2 3 points there. It says one of the points I note here is that A second pathway to bad strategy is the siren song of template style strategy, fill in the blanks. I mean, so a lot of people have it at the back of their mind that, oh, it's not just to write our mission, vision, put it all together, all those word for word kind of things, right? It's beyond that. And it says, the third point here says, the pathway to bad strategy is that is the third pathway to bad strategy is a new thought and the belief that all you need to do to succeed is having a positive mental attitude. And again, it's not only by motivation, right? It's not only by motivation will you use to attain a good strategy, right? You need to get involved, get involved as a leader, and also trust the process as well, because those are the things that actually make a good strategy work. And I think one of he then gave the very, the story was almost like two chapters, 2 pages, but it's a story of, a company, a tech company, that there were three leaders who were trying to make decision for the company, and three of them were coming from three different angles, not for their own interest actually, but at least for the benefit of the company that, okay, this is what we've been doing before. We need to now evolve to this. And they're coming from a very technical strategy point of view, which because of hierarchy and because of so many clash of power too as well, no one could come to concessions. And their ultimate boss, who is the CEO of the company at that current time, couldn't control them to come to a consensus because he left them to handle it. He left them to just do it. So that's why, as a boss, to as a boss, as a predecessor, or as a boss or as a owner of a company, it's not enough to just leave the strategy for the whole people that are under you, your subordinates, to work it out. Sometimes they might be having conflicting ideas, and they are not having conflicting ideas just because of they are trying to prove that, oh, they know it all, but it's just because of they have this genuine interest to also prove that, yes, this is the way forward, this is the right solution. And whereas it's also possible for the leader to have combined those three solutions together and say, okay, this is what we'll do. Why not let's take from this person's point A, why not let us take this step? If this doesn't work, we'll now know that this is the next step. One of the just taking out those guys' points. So, but he didn't do that till another person came in on board, and that person now had to put his own policies and take one of their strategy that they were arguing about, and take one of their own ideas that they were arguing about, and implemented it. And it's then from there they evolved to the company evolved to other companies now even buying the company. I think from the old story, Compaq, the company evolved to Compaq, then Compaq to Howlett Packard. So it's now those HP laptop that we are now using now. So Howlett Packard is a brand that also makes HP laptops and other smart or hardware devices for computer use. Right. So strategy involves I'm just reading some of my points here. It says strategy involves, focus and therefore choices. And choice means that, setting aside some goals in favor of others. So sometimes not everything will favor you at the end of the day. So when this hard work is not done, weak amorphosis strategy is the result. So again, sometimes you have a lot of options, you have a lot of choices to make, but the ones that some of them are not really, if you look at it emotionally, right, they will not be in your favor. But if you look at it at the end of the day, the long term of things, right, it will end up being in your favor at the end of the day. So it says serious strategy work in an already successful organization may not take place until the wolf is at the door. Just coming from that story, right? The wolf at the door was the CEO then, who was not able to control those guys and implement. Take all their objections together and say, okay, this is what we need to do, right? So that that was the person who was portrayed as the wolf, or even until the wolf claws. Or so we're just saying in the whole summary of that is that until the person who is like the bad egg, or who is like the person that will antagonize your strategy, until that person is out, there's no way you'll be able to implement efficiently or implement in a seamless way, right? strategy is also is scarcity is a so I wrote here that strategy is scarcity child and have strategy is scarcity child and to have a strategy rather than vague aspiration is to choose one path and eschew others. So we need to choose a path, right? Choose the right path. Sometimes it doesn't come in your favor, and sometimes it might come in your favor. And it says that when a strategy works, we tend to remember what was accomplished and not the possibilities that were painfully, set aside, right? Because for a strategy to work, it takes a lot of rigorous process, and just like the opening line, strategy is real hard work that a lot of people try to avoid. And I think is even playing with my own mentality right now, because ordinary reading this book is I would say one of the most stressful things, because it's like Evosa says, is very, very academic in nature. But actually, if you actually take a deep dive into those stories and how they end up coming to, how the stories ended, right? You'll be able to see. This is just one of the stories that I was able to read from the beginning to the end. And there are like two more stories in other uh two sub chapters, which says in under this chapter, that under the template style strategy and also under the new thoughts strategy too. There are some other stories that I've not even dig deep into. So just taking from those insights, right? It just shows you that strategy at the end of the day, it helps you, manage your work. It helps you become more efficient, and just understand that, sometimes it takes painstaking journey to achieve good strategy. It's not always easy, right? But at the end of the day, you scale through. Thank you very much. I think that's how I'm going to wrap my own chapter, and Efosa, the Efosa can take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. So I was just about um, lifting up my clock. It's time, it's time, it's time to flash my red alarm, right? And then you just wrapped up. Quite interesting insight from chapter 4. Why so many bad strategy? And I think you hit on a couple of points: the unwillingness or inability to choose, to focus and then narrow down to choosing what you need to do. I remember some years back, we were in a strategy meeting and we had something called the parking lot. So we had, you know, brainstormed through different strategy for different particular project that we were handling. So I was driving the digital innovation at the time. And we had the parking lot. So the parking lot is where you put things that are not necessarily not important, but in order for you not to do too many things at the same time, you put that particular activity or strategy in the parking lot. And maybe you go back into the parking lot later on after a quarter or two, and then you can bring it out. And that tells you, speak to the fact that you need to really focus on your priority, the need to make a choice. Having said that, we want to bring Lady Evosa for chapter 5, who is going to take us back to the kernel of strategy. So I did highlighted that part yesterday, but it's good that we have a deep dive into the kernel of good strategy, because if not, we'll keep having so many bad strategies. So Lady Vosa, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. So good evening, everybody. Nana, it's good to see you. Okay, I'm not seeing you. It's good to have you around. I'll start my chapter 5 from where it stopped, where my take home from David's chapter 4 is that the strategy, he says strategy is hard work that most people try to avoid. I can imagine. And that's why chapter 5 is talking about the good strategy. Also, the chapter 5 basically is letting us know how to have, and it's trying to narrow the whole strategy thing down to make it easy for us to be able to do to be able to see the strategy as not that difficult, as not as difficult as it is. So it went, says the kernel of a good strategy. And it says that I will start with a good strategy is a clear action that is backed by an argument. That's what the book says. And it's a mixture of thought and action and a basic underlying structure. And that's the kernel that is talking about. And I'll go straight to, I don't want to use, he made examples, he used examples with doctors, how doctors diagnose, and from there, their approach will now be sorry. First of all, let me talk about the kernel that has the 3 components. Talks about the strategy. No, sorry, it's not. Talks about the 3 components. And the 3 components are the diagnosis. Yeah, that was what I was talking about, the doctor. The diagnosis, a guiding policy, and a set of coherent actions. Those are the 3 that I put down there. So talked about, also used examples of the doctors to make it quite clear. I actually enjoyed the examples where he used the doctors as example to the doctors diagnose, and their guiding policy will not be the therapeutic approach. I also talked about the coherent actions to be taken will not be the prescriptions for diet and all of that. But what we want to go to now is how to make a good strategy. Now we want to take it from the diagnosis, how to simplify, how to make strategy a bit easy for us. The diagnosis talks about how diagnosis is to simplify complexities by identifying the critical aspects of a challenge. So when we want to make a strategy, first of all, we'll diagnose, and it says that a good diagnosis provides a guide for action. So when you want to diagnose, you have to, it went again to talk about how to form a good diagnosis. It says you analyze the data and patterns to uncover the real issues. 2, it says you challenge assumptions to avoid conventional but flawed thinking. Challenge the assumptions. I'm an economist, and most times we have all the assumptions, and we also have the softwares where we now challenge those assumptions that we have to know the significant percent, what's it called now? Percentage, the significant amount of the strategy. Significant what now? I'll get to that later. Then he also talked about to focus on leverage points where strategic action can make the biggest difference. Another one is a good diagnosis clarifies the nature of challenge and sets the stage for effective solutions. So that's how to get a good diagnosis. And to quickly also go to the guiding policies. In a strategy, the next one is when you already diagnosed. Now the next one is the guiding policies, and it says it's now an approach that you choose to address these challenges that have been identified in the diagnosis. What are they? Or why is this important? It says it bridges, why do you need the guiding policies? It helps us to bridge the gap between the diagnosis and the action. And 2, it provides a clear direction without being overly prescriptive. Means that when it helps you to have a clear path to follow. Then how do we know the good policies, a good guiding policies? It says we use available strengths I put it as advantage to tackle the problems. We use, for me, sometimes I always tell people that I use the strength and the weakness of my staff to be productive, however it is. I don't just look at their weaknesses and throw them away. But this one, it says that you use the available strength to now, and which is true, to now tackle the problem. Then 2, it says you rule out certain actions to maintain focus, just like the Apple did, where they got where Steve Jobs came in, and they had to use this guiding policy by ruling out some of the, at a time they had so many products, and they had to focus on what they have now. Then you say you anticipate obstacles. That's for the competitive reactions from external challenges. You use the Walmart stores. He says that the rural markets were underserved, and that was his diagnosis. And his guiding policies now became putting in large stores in small towns. Now, after discussing the diagnosis and the guiding policies, we go to the coherent actions. The coherent actions here, it says, is the consistent and coordinated steps taken to execute the guiding policies. Having done the diagnosis and the policy to also now follow. Now, taking the action is also very important. And for me, taking the actions, you have to be consistent, you have to be coordinated to be able to execute these things. And why is it even important? It says it turns guiding policies into concrete results. Now, what are the guiding policies? Where you have the strengths, you bring in the strengths to tackle a problem. When those problems are actually tackled, if you get results, it becomes a concrete result. And it also aligns the resources and the efforts. The resources, in my case, the resources is the staff. The effort is me trying to use their strength to make them aware of themselves, and in the long run, they're also productive. And even when they're not productive, because they are aware of themselves, they know what it is that they should do. How do we know an effective, I put it here, action? We already know that it's a coherent actions. 1, the action works together. It brings unity. It does not not at cross purposes. It says that it focuses effort where it matters most. We talked about focus. We've been talking about being focused from the chapter 1 up till now. And for me, what are the takeaways in this chapter 5? The takeaways are: 1, it said diagnosis frames the problem. We will all agree that when you go to the hospital, if we want to use the doctor, if we want to use the foreign policies and all of that, when you get the problem, when you want to get the problem, you are getting into the process of, it says, process of like trying to get the problem. It says diagnosis frames the problem. So it brings out the problems. And the guiding policies outlines how to tackle it. Then you go, when you get when you know how to tackle it, it's now time to take the action. You execute the plan effectively and consistently. And in conclusion, I'd say that the good strategy requires tough choices, like David has also said, that it's not easy to actually make a good, it's not easy to strategize. And that's what most of us really lack. it's actually not, I mean, looking at all this, how do you diagnose, how do you get the guiding policies, and now the action part for me is the problem, because sometimes it's always very difficult for us to take the good choices, like Princess also said. So you see some hard choices that you have to take. There, your emotions and all of that starts running all over. So I would say good strategy requires tough choices, what to do and what not to do. And that's where I come to the end of chapter 5. Thank you. Over to you, Princess.
Wow, wow, wow. Very, very great insight you have shared in chapter 5. Thank you so very much for that. Um, I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that. Do we have anything to add to that? I'm not hearing anybody. Am I speaking to myself? Can you hear me?
Please, this is Lady Ovosa talking. Can you please talk? This is the time I really need people
Yes, we
to
heard you loud and clear. Thank you so
contribute.
much, Lady. Thank you so much, Lady Ovosa. We were waiting for the next, well, I was waiting for the next speaker, so that we could round
Okay.
up and then make our comments and contribution and ask our questions.
Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to share my slide. I don't know if you can see my screen. I'm going to speak on behalf of Ramatu quickly. While you were speaking, I said, let me not break that flow. So chapter 6 is talking about using leverage. And I think from yesterday's conversation, we did delve into the importance of having leverage in business. What is your competitive edge? What is your advantage? What is your unique selling proposition? What is your strategic edge? And I just want to quickly just read through the first um, paragraph. Yeah, it says a good strategy draws power from focus in mind. Just to add to what Lady Evosa has said, and also David, it says focusing mind, energy, and action. That focus channels at the right moment onto a pivotal objective can produce a cascade of favorable outcome. I call this source of power, and that source of power is leverage. So if you see the first picture, when you go into a battle, and even from the case study that is described in the book itself, we talked about David and Goliath. You need to know what is your advantage point. Where are you coming from? How would you be able to surmount the battle? And that is how you plan strategy. So just going into the text, in this chapter, Richard Rumelt explained how leverage is a critical component of good strategy. Leverage in strategic terms means achieving disproportionate result from focused effort. It's about identifying and using high impact points where a small shift or action can lead to significant gain. Very important. Where is that pivotal point? Good strategy. Roommates emphasize that good strategy is not about trying to do everything. It is about doing what matters most with precision and timing. And for me, I think it would have underlined this timing and precision, because for me, what has really changed the game for me is timing. So sometimes most of us delay in doing things at the right time, not because we don't do it, but because we don't do it at the right time. And so we can't leverage so much on it. We call it what do we call it now? Um, there's another word for it. What's the right word for it? When you delay in doing things, what do we call it? There's a word for it. It just
Procrastination?
you yeah, we procrastinate. So a lot of us procrastinate until one day I saw somewhere, and I know most of us don't like that particular um, description of what procrastination means. It it tells you of a mind that is very lazy in taking action when you procrastinate. And when I saw the word lazy, I couldn't associate that word with myself. So every time I want to procrastinate and I'm beginning to get into that particular window, I'm like, Princess, you're not lazy. Princess, you're not lazy. Do you understand? I just keep telling myself, you're not a lazy person. Do not procrastinate. Take action. Do it on time. Save yourself some freedom and have excess time to even play around, you know. So this often involves recognizing a pivotal point or a center of gravity, a key area where applying pressure or resources can produce outsized effect. So you will get the result, but outsized effect. How do you get the result such that when you get the result, you are able to also enjoy it? So you procrastinate to the last point, to that window where you are so stressed and you're under pressure. You will get the result. You will get your A if you're a student, but you are procrastinated to the end. And then you begin to have a ripple effect in the negative angle, right? I just wanted to put that in view so that when we're thinking about our business and thinking about how to take action, we need to focus on those things that are very important. Now, he discusses three main ways leverage work in strategy. And the first one is said is anticipation, right? Anticipate. See the way this gentleman is sitting, just anticipating. I know I'm going to the battlefield. When you're going to the battlefield, what do? You anticipate, you prepare, you get everything checked out. Oh, I need ammo. I need this. I've not ordered for that. So let's imagine what is happening now in the world. You think US will go on such journey and embark on such critical field, you know, with Iran without preparation, without anticipation? No, I don't think they would do that. So we need to always anticipate. The strategists may have insight into predictable aspects of orders. So that means you need to collect your intelligence and it's not just getting ready. Others' behavior that can be turned to advantage. So if, for instance, I'm in a battle with Lady Ovosa, I know what she's going to do next. Doing business, we're doing the same business, we're in the same area. I need to anticipate what this lady is going to do next. So you need to anticipate. I will not go too much into that conversation, but I think it's important to look at this very three main ways to leverage. The second one is concentration. You need to focus on your effort. David did what? When we talked about David and Goliath, what did he do? He knew he was going to use a sling. He knew he has to pick the best stones, right? He knows he has to be prepared because that's the only ammo he has. So he needed to focus on his tools, and he did just that. So you need to concentrate, return to concentration, arise when focusing effort on fewer. And I talked about the parking lot. So you have a lot of things to do, but which one is going to, how do you prioritize such that you get the best result? Yeah, the 20-80 rule, the 80-20 rule. How do you put your effort to get maximum result? You put 20% effort and you're getting 80% result. I think that is very important. We need to look at it from that perspective. And of course, the third one is proximate objective. And when you look at, I'm going into, because proximate objective is also described fully in chapter 7, which I'm not going to go into. But I think it's very important that we summarize our key takeaway from this particular chapter and what are the critical points. Rumelt also caution against mistaking ambition or vision for strategy. True strategy leverage comes from deep insight. You need to articulate, anticipate, know your competitor's weak point into the situation. You need to do a broad analysis, market intelligence, call it whatever it is, but you need to be able to anticipate and not just leveraging on so many goals. I want to do this. I want to build a ranch. I want to travel. I want to do. So most people do their vision board and they have so much around the vision board, and you don't even know which one you're tackling for which month. Is not specific, you know. So I think by applying leverage effectively, an organization can amplify its strength. Our businesses, we can look down into our businesses and really amplify our strength. What is the strength that Nancy has over Princess? What is that strength that I have over other businesses that are within the same area? And then you overcome those obstacles. Don't forget, we all have limited resources. So you have to permutate, if I may use that word, you have to permutate your resources across your different objectives, strategic objective. Having said that, I hope that chapter 6 is a little bit more clearer, and I've been able to lay insight on chapter 6. I'm going to open the boardroom for discussion, and I want to thank the two main presenters for tonight, David and also Lady Evosa, for really walking us through chapter 4, 5, and also chapter 6, for laying that foundation. The floor is open. Boardroom members, please add your voice. Let's give our flowers to David and also to Lady Evosa for stepping up tonight and showing up and doing the work. Thank you to both of you. The floor is open. I'm going to send you flowers and dollars in the chat room. Yeah. And some strategy notes so that you can spend it. Don't put it in the parking lot. You need to spend it almost immediately. Yes, Nelap, over to you.
All right. Good evening once again, everyone. David, Lady Ovosa, and Princess, thank you so much for, the summaries of chapters 4, 5, and 6. And I must say, the way it was very clinically done, you focused on the main points, simply talked about the things that are highly important. I think what the main message that the author is trying to pass across in these chapters. So thank you so much. Beautifully done, simplified. So thank you once again. For me, I would start with chapter 4, where David talked about discovering power in chapter 4, and how, good strategy. You just have to focus on certain goals. You cannot do everything. So it's very important that in business we prioritize, right? You you can't do everything. You may have a lot of goals. As Princess said, there are so many things that I really want to do this year, but then looking at it, I know that it may not be possible. There are some things I have to let go of, and even in business too. So many things we want to do, so many things we want to achieve, but then you know that it may not be possible at the end of the day. I call it a movement without motion. You're doing a lot of work, but there's really no output. There's really nothing that shines forth. So very important to focus. It's about for me, I would say it's about not spreading our resources thin, because we know that resources are always scarce, right? I think that's what economists say. Resources are always scarce. So you cannot spread it thin because you're trying to have so many goals, you spread your resources thin. So instead, focus, find the ones that will make the most sense, or, will give the most result, and then put your resources there to get at least those results. So thank you so much for the presentation. For chapter 5, for me, what really the punchline for me, when Lady Ovosa talked about anticipation, and he says seeing and acting on changes before competitors. I think it's very important, and that's why it's important we stay abreast with happenings in the world. You know, I remember earlier, in the early years of my marriage, every morning, my husband will put on CNN and the news. Then he still does it, even Arise News, you know, TV stations we have here in Nigeria. And for me, I just want to listen to music. But then it's important because you never know. Policies change every day. You know, so when you listen, you begin to anticipate. Oh, the dollar is going up. Dollar is going to crash. So you know what to do. So you keep ahead of your competitors. So anticipation is important. And, you know, how do we stay ahead of our competitors is by keeping abreast with current happenings and even trends. What is trending now? You know, we look at AI is taking over a lot of things. So what do we do? Our businesses, which way do we go? You know, what are the things that we're doing now that we know might be useless in the next 2 to 3 years because AI is taking over? So it's important that we stay abreast of current happenings and trends, and it will help us stay ahead of our competitors. So once again, take your flowers, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you very much, Lady Nenlap. Do we have any contributor in the house? Mr. Saoluwatoyin.
Thank you, Princess. So first of all, I must confess that I didn't follow through all of the presentation so well because I was also engaged in a different phone call at the same time. So I was listening in with one ear and because it was business related, so I'm sorry. So I had to multitask there. Okay, so yeah, but at the same time, I did listen to some bits and pieces. So thank you very much to all our presenters, our wonderful presenters for the day. Starting with David, Lady Ovosa, and Ajia Ramatsu, in Princess's voice, I would say. I think I wrote it in a different way on the chat. I was supposed to say Ajia Ramatsu in Princess's voice. So thank you very much. You guys did really well and kept to time and good presentation overall. So I was also going to stick, you know, what stood out for me, especially when David was saying that, you know, we can't afford to delegate, you know, the strategy piece of our organization to third parties. Like, what do I mean by that? We can't allow, you know, as owners, especially for us within our domain here, we are more of young startups, young, you know, the ecosystem is made up of, you know, people who have young organizations coming up. You can't afford to leave the strategy piece in the hands of others. I mean, not to say that you cannot allow people to come up with their opinions and bring in ideas and all of that, but the overall strategy has to be somehow driven by us, the founders, because you remember we talked about start with why. You know the why, you know the other components, why, when, whatever, right? And you should be the one dictating that, the timelines, basically the underlying principles that govern, you know, the strategic principles which you have, our strategic planning and everything which you have within your organization should come from you. Then others can lean in to help further that, you know, that mission or whatever. So very important. I think we cannot afford to outsource that bit, because that's what some people do at some point. And what I'm saying is, I'm talking about sometimes we feel that, okay, yes, the organization has started running, so I can focus on all other things. But, you know, strategy never stops. It is you need to continue improving on your strategy. You need to continue iterating, just like Nella was saying just now. Things keep changing from time to time. Is it in the financial realm? Is it in the technology realm? Whatever, what have you? You have to ensure that you put everything together, quite well at all times, and not being left behind. Because if your strategy yesterday worked well for you, it may not work well for you today because of times have evolved and things have changed. People no longer have the appetite for the way you are selling your product, or the type of product you sell. So you need to evolve. In one word, we need to learn to evolve our strategy and ensure that we are always at the forefront of driving. Yesterday, I think during my presentation, we talked about when Apple was faced with certain challenge. Steve Jobs had to come back into the picture. He had to come back and take over, because sometimes if you leave it early, if you leave the management too early, if you haven't made it well grounded before you remove yourself, then the team might run into trouble and all of that. So you have to be there to oversee what's always happening and all of that. And that was the way they were able to survive, because the original visionary came back on board, and he tried to put things in perspective and make it work for the now, the short term, in order for them to have a long-term victory or achievement, basically. So very important. Then down to, yes, the next speakers. I think overall, generally, I think strategy, we need to be able to understand that, like I said before, strategy doesn't end at one thing. It could be multiple-faced or multifaceted. Let me use that word. The fact that you're carrying out strategy within your marketing, it doesn't stop you from carrying out, a good strategy within sales, within, let's say you're a manufacturing company. You ensure that you are putting a good strategy. Because in the end, everything comes together. If you put good strategy into one bit and leave the others, yes, it might only hold for some time, but when the chips are down, one overweighs, the weight is not balanced. So we have to ensure that we're putting good strategy in place for every facet of our business, in every different facet of our business, not just one, not the overarching. Sometimes we just look at the overarching governing of the business. Okay, yes, this is the strategy, but what might make the little difference might just be, let's say, after you have made a good product. Like the other day, I said, okay, Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola didn't sell more than how many bottles in their first year, right? Okay. Is it because the product was not good enough? No. Is it because the product, didn't meet the standards of NAFDAC or this or that or whatever? No. But probably because they didn't have a good marketing strategy in place, right? At that point. And when someone decides, okay, let us do the marketing, let us do the the work within that domain, and then you could see that, okay, they started making sales. So you might have a perfect product, bad sales strategy, and your product will go under. So you need to ensure that everything is coming together. Don't focus on just one aspect of the business. You have to ensure that there's no one that's probably more important. Some people, problem they have is supply chain distribution. Look at what Dangote is doing today. Dangote has decided to take the bull by the horn, getting CNG, what do you call it? CNG trucks, to ensure that his product gets straight to the consumers without any hitch, right? And without any extra price hikes. He's even offering the people who were buying from him, he's even offering them, less transportation. So there's not the cost of that commodity is going to be delivered to them less cost of transportation. So there's not going to be any cost of transportation, which means that they're going to be making extra gain or extra profit from buying directly from Dangote, for instance, as opposed to buying from other sources. So you see that's a very good strategy in place. It might have spent in the immediate, it might be spending more to buy those 4,000 trucks, but on the long term, 3, 4, 5 years time, will have gotten his return on investment, and voila, he's getting, he's covered the market, he's taking the market all by himself. So you see where good strategy comes in. It's in being able to understand that you need to you have to take control. Generally, you have to take control of every aspect of the business. So I don't want to talk too much. I know I have done so already. My time is fast spent. Yes, so let's keep ditching out good strategies as we lead our organizations. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you very much for that contribution, Saudu Watoyi. I think that is the best way to close the section for tonight. Once again, I want to thank David and also Lady Ovosa for their presentation. It was very insightful, I must say, and also for everyone contributing in the boardroom. Thank you, our HOD, Nenlab, and also to Saudu Watoyi. I think we can say good night from Dubai. And to those of you in Canada, you're just waking up, enjoy the afternoon. For those of you in Lagos, like David, yeah, go find some tea and mind your business, my darling. Read your books for your exams. Lady Ovosa and Nenlab from Abuja, good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.